G'day guys, Aaron here from Westisbest, and as you can tell, we're back home from our trip up north, and we'll go through a quick Q&A whilst we're down here in sunny Perth whilst it's raining outside. I hope everyone's staying safe out there, because obviously in the last sort of 24 hours everything's hit the fan to the east of us, so South Australia's gone into a little bit of a lockdown, so stay safe while you're there. But hopefully you guys can get a little bit of entertainment out of this, and we'll come through without the dog interrupting the camera too much. So excuse me while I read off the iPads. So on this episode, what we'll go through is a Q&A of some of your questions that you had, as well as some lessons learned that Ron and I had whilst we were out on the tracks up north over the last month. I will start firstly with any of the issues that we had with the car. See you, dog. So three main issues. So we melted the airline that I went through in one of the episodes, and as a result of that we needed to buy a connector to fix the airline, which in itself was a $7 part. Initially, that's the Chinese finger lock style joiner that you can push standard air hose into and it locks. That was the one that was slowly leaking. This is the $7 2-pack joiner that actually solved the problem in the end, which is the air vacuum line joiner. So that is the only issue that we had with the car when we fixed it. And obviously that was an issue with the modifications that I'd done to the vehicle. With regard to the windscreen's hold up great, so it's still going strong. I got in a couple other chips in the outer layer of the window as well whilst we're up there. So I'll get a new windscreen, probably in summer when it's not raining every 5 seconds, so I can actually get it to seal. And then the final thing, one that we didn't really recognise that was going to happen, was when we came back we realised that the new car had a lot of hard water spots across the vehicle. So for those that don't know, anything sort of north of, I guess, Carnarvon, you start entering real proper limestone country where there's a lot of sort of that limey calcium build up in the water. I know down the south in Mandurah area and stuff like that, a lot of the bore water has it, as well as a lot of the drinking water. But what we didn't count on is it was actually going to basically burn onto the car and leave little white water rings everywhere on it. Apparently if you get bore water on your vehicle or anything like that, you can dry it off, get the marks off pretty much straight away. Because it baked in the sun for sort of like that 2-3 weeks, it was almost impossible to get off. So we used everything from like vinegars, CLR, some of the heavy CT10 or CT18 style truck washers, even a razor blade to get some of it off of the front windshield, to try and get those sort of marks away, and nothing pulled it off other than a machine polish, which unfortunately I had to pay for a full detail basically for that, but it was only on the outside, and realistically for the car's now got minimal of that pinned down red dirt everywhere. Going into the Caravan issues, so Caravan wise, the bed was obviously the main issue, and we fixed that with the tech screws, and then we've also had a couple other little sort of tiny hiccups which will likely be covered on warranty through Jayco, and they get repaired basically in a month from today. So for those that aren't aware, the caravan industry, not dissimilar to like the car industry, is booming. So anything has huge lead time. So I booked my service about a week into the trip, and I only just got it for the 10,000 service just after we got back. Otherwise I would have had to wait another 2 or 3 weeks. So bed slides were an issue. There's a little bit of a leak in the roof that they're going to look at. Likely it's just one of the seals, because it's a single roof, because it's the small model, which is a good thing, so they'll probably just likely re-celastic it. And then other things are just little dicky things like the door, when you open it the button will stay in, and things like that. But overall, other than the bed slides, nothing was major. So we could still use it as is. It was just a little bit, dicky with some things. Fuel. So the Fortuna only has an 80 litre tank, which is acceptable range for most places up there. But there were a couple of places where the economy that I was getting with the Caravan, which was about 15.3, wouldn't have been ideal for some of those situations. So the bungles, the way that the fuel stations work is between Halls Creek and I think it's Turkey Creek. And then heading into bungles, which is sort of the 70k in, plus you're driving around there, left us with minimal fuel. And in hindsight, instead of having the jerry can of water on the Caravan, it was probably more ideal if we took a jerry can of fuel. So we're only carrying 80 litres of water. So we were going probably off the more extreme limits of water usage. Obviously, we don't have a shower or a toilet. So most of the ancillary water use disappears because of that. So that jerry would have been better off for another 20 litres, which would have given us that 130k extra at that 15.3. It would have also potentially been an issue if in the later end of the series where we had to cull Wolf Creek off. Wolf Creek would have been really right on the cusp of being able to get fuel. So it's on a Tenamai desert track. I think it's about 160k in and out, and then you got to either turn right and nip back to Halls Creek to get fuel to then go west again, which in itself is only like 15-minute turnaround. Otherwise, we would have been cutting fine to Fitzroy Crossing, which would have, I think it was about 150, 160k down the road. So that was the only situation that we were really like pushing that range without an ancillary tank or jerrys or a bladder. And we think realistically the jerry would have probably solved that problem. Fuel in itself, just FYI, pricing. So the most expensive fuel that we paid for was $1.85, and then the cheapest fuel was in the $1.30s, like $1.31, $1.32-ish, in Kununurra. So across the board for the period that we actually were up there for, which was the month prior to the school holidays, basically all of June, average fuel price was probably somewhere between about $1.55 and $1.60. Lunches, we probably started talking about it. So we started making our own cut lunches, which saved us a lot of money because it was working out to be up to in excess of about $15 a person for a cut lunch or some form of like hot food at the servos or cafes or whatever like that. So what we ended up doing was either buying like a Woolies cooked chook, or we had schnitzels a couple of times that we cooked the night before, let them fridge overnight and slice them up and put them into wraps for the next day. But you do get into that little black hole of having wraps for 3 or 4 weeks straight because of it, but it saved us so much money. And when you can grab just a can out of the fridge of the car and put the wraps in the fridge in the morning, you're good to go. It just used a little bit of forward planning for us because otherwise we'll be looking at climbing in through the van over half the stuff when the van's down and getting into the fridge, which is the furthest point from the front door when the van's in its unpopped state. As I alluded to with the water, so the water, 100 litres, which we took, was more than enough. Like we were using that sort of like 12 or 13 litres of water a day without the showers and toilets. We had long drop toilets at all of our stops, which was handy. And we obviously used a lot more like sort of hand sanitizer and stuff like that. Washing wise, we generally saved it for the caravan parks. I think we hand washed once. And yeah, it would just be the way that we traveled was more ideal, that we didn't need to use water as much, or we could hold out to those sort of like ensuite style sites and stuff and then fill up again. If you were free camping a little bit more, it probably would have become more prevalent. But yeah, so the van has an 80 litre, and then the 20 that we took is probably the excess 20 that we didn't need. Rubbish. we made a lot of rubbish. So as I was alluding to in one of the episodes, we kept saying that there's a quarantine area in the Kimberley, and off the top of my head, I can't remember exactly where it starts. It might be like near Doon or somewhere like that, but it actually encompasses Kununurra and Wyndham, and it's like a fruit fly zone basically. So you can't have fresh fruit from either the Northern Territory side or the WA side in that area. So you got to be careful with what you take. As a result, we're having tinned vegetables a lot. Tinned vegetables creates a tin, and then obviously we don't use much water, so we're using hand towels to wipe things and dry things and clean things. And we're using about, believe it or not, almost a 35-litre bag, like rubbish bag of rubbish a day, between alcoholic drinks at night, cans of drink during the day, water bottles. It was actually quite a lot more than we were expecting. Wasn't such a bad issue because nearly everywhere we went we had an option to offload those into sort of the day stock bins and stuff like that, or the nearest town. But the Bungle Bungles has no bins in the entire park. So I think with the 3 days that we were in and around there, we ended up dropping all our rubbish off at the turn off once we were airing up and everything like that. The battery wise and electricity wise, overall we didn't struggle whatsoever. So the car has a 105 amp hour dual battery system in it, which is controlled by the Red Arc BCDC charge, which is a 25 amp one. I've never had a BCDC charged battery. I've only had one that's slaved off a battery before in the Jeep through a VSR, which has no impact on its charging quality. So that in itself was giving me a good, strong battery at all times. And to be honest, I'm really, really happy with that 105 amp hour. Yes, it only gives me, 52-ish amps of usable power, but that was good to be able to charge drones, run the Waco run constantly for 4 weeks straight. We can run the inverter that I have in the car, which is just a cigarette plug one, so it's only 300 watt. Which charged, the computer and everything like that. The Caravan, conversely, has a 100 amp hour battery in it as well, but that is pretty much solely to run the LED lighting that's in the Caravan at night time, as well as some of those sort of cigarette socket style fittings that we're using. So we've got some outdoor lighting that we use, and then like USB chargers and stuff like that off of it, because the fridge in the Caravan is gas, so when we pulled up it's gas until we plug it into 240. We're running off gas, which saved us so much electricity along the way. When the car is driving, it does go reverse to 12 volt when you flick the switch, so it will run off the car through a hot wire arrangement. Tools and spares. So as you can see, I've got my little goodie bag here, which is basically filled with all the most random things that I could think of, from bolts, washers, fuses, spare globes, wheel nuts, shackles, and a little bit of electrical 12 volt equipment and stuff like that, as well as some valves and valve inners and stuff like that. So car wise, I was good to go, right? Caravan wise, I was probably a little bit underprepared with what I did and didn't take on the trip. Hindsight's always a great thing, and obviously it wasn't a life-saving or life-changing or risky situation that we're in because of that. I would recommend, if you have a Caravan, taking wood screws or wood and metal screws, as well as a regular drill for sort of cabinetry repairs and stuff like that on the fly. We did take like Sikaflex and Loctite, as well as some sort of thread tapey type stuff and things like that I thought were going to be a bit more common, as well as like the car spares and stuff like that, which I had the air filter, a spare oil filter if I needed to do a service out there, and new serpentine belt and all those sort of like standard spares. But next time I'll I'll definitely chuck in some, you know, sort of more cabinetry specific stuff with a regular drill, because I only took the impact drill. Which, if you don't know, they don't always work great with stainless fittings. Generally they'll shear off the heads and stuff like that, just because they're too torquey, and stainless is quite brittle in those situations. And then they're sometimes a little bit overpowering for drill bits, and if you're borrowing a drill bit off a mate, he's going to have a round drill bit, right? Not the hexagonal bit that you use to for all the impact bits. So we'll work on that and go from there. But realistically, space wise, it's all pretty much was in the caravan by the end of the trip, with the other than the exception of the skin for the impact drill, and the skin for the regular drill. But I've now bought the drill bits for an impact drill for it, which are only about a couple of bucks extra each for it. So sort of whatever. Editing on the road. So it initially made like a lot of sense and good sense, but when you're driving sort of 700 k's a day, it did become a little bit hard and a little bit of a burden. So anyone who's thinking of doing it, you might need to come up with a more systematic approach than I had. And I'm willing to hear the way that some of you guys out there actually do it. This thing, which is a solid state hard drive, saved my life numerous times. So I borrowed one off a mate for the trip, and I've since bought the same one that he had. So it's a Samsung T5 500 gigabyte hard drive, which is double the size of my MacBook Air for space, and it's obviously got no moving parts in it, so when it bounces around and everything like that, it doesn't break. So all of the stuff's on there now, and what was happening is I was copying everything onto the desktop. It overloaded the desktop, which was fine because I already had this, so I knew it was going to happen. But I'd started editing a couple of videos, and the way that iMovie works is a little bit impractical. If you put a file from a certain file directory in it, and that file then disappears, it will keep it in there in the cache folder, but the second you publish the video, that video will just go black for that 20-second period of the video. And space-wise, my computer was struggling hard, because when I've got 40 minutes of footage in its raw format, we're talking that's probably closer to 100 gigabytes of footage. So, you know, I might have videoed something for 2 minutes, which could have been, 800 megabyte, and I've used, 2 or 3 seconds of it, but it's used that whole file in the cache, so it was maxing out the memory on my computer hard. And I basically had to wait till about 2/3 through the trip to be able to offload properly onto the SD card, the solid state drive card, and be able to alleviate all the clogged up space in the Adobe Cloud through Photoshop and Lightroom. But I've still got so many photos that I've got to go through, so I'm probably only about a quarter away through the photos now, and we're a couple of weeks back since then. The Dyson vacuum. Had a couple of people ask, so it's our old house vacuum that we use. It's I think it's a V6 Animal, and you can plug the actual head directly into the body. And it was great. We used that nearly every day, and it was one of them last things that we thought of taking. It's usually my garage vacuum, and it charged fine off the 300 watt inverter in the car. And then when we got to 240, we just left it plugged in to be able to gain that bit of a better charge out of it. But we'd probably take one again. 100% take it again. It was perfect for what it was. The evaporative cooler, I don't know if you ever saw it because we've never used it. It was the last thing that we bought before we headed out onto the road. So I was like, we've lived in Darwin for 2 years before, right? And I was like, it's going to be hot. We're going to have hot days and cold nights, but it's going to be hot to get to sleep. And the evaporative cooler, I think it was about $100 in the end, which we'll probably use it in summer. But the size of it is probably like the size of a ream of paper box. So in hindsight, it probably wasn't worth taking for this specific trip for it. And then for future trips, the caravan, we'll head down south over Chrissy. We'll probably use it there. So it's sort of you know, maybe if the aircon was on the roof rather than in one of the drawers with a limited space that we had, it would have been easier. Snorkeling gear we took, it was worth it. The water was quite cold in that June-July period, so all of our diving sort of started around Exmouth, Coral Bay, Quobba. We did diving. Shark Bay, it was bloody cold in the water, so we didn't go in there. Rhonda had this sort of like one-piece stinger suit, which was really, like, she found like the week before we left, and I decided that boardies would just be fine. It was probably closer to uncomfortable than comfortable for me, but the wind once you got out is what really hit your bones. So maybe take a 1 or 2 mil wetsuit or something like that, or if you've got an old surfing wetsuit, you can go from there. Mosquitoes and midgies. I'm only just getting over all of my midgie bites and everything like that. Day one, Mount Magnet, we got hit by 2 sandflies or giant midgies or whatever, and I had like a purple bruise on my leg, on my foot and my leg up here. So if you see it in the clip, I apologise because it looked horrendous. I get bitten by mosquitoes a lot in any way. I do take antihistamines for it. I do have multiple creams like hydrocortisone cream, and some other sort of creams to be able to, you know, stop scratching them because I was heavily allergic as a kid. We had citronella candles, sandalwood candle sticks to burn, and the I can't remember the name of it, but it's the little burner that goes on the my Jetboil bottle, and it was okay with all of that. We kind of made like an invisible line of where the midgies and the sandflies really kicked in. So obviously it will likely change, but somewhere between sort of like anything south of Port Hedland, they were there. Anything north, Kununurra was the only real obvious one where there's mosquitoes. And it was weird because they were like, I don't know the anatomy of a mosquito very well, but they might shed or something like that. So in the morning, our car had like heaps of grey shells all over it and the caravan from mosquitoes. So I think they must like shed overnight or something like that, or that's how they die or something like that. But yeah, so yeah, the Thermacell, sorry, is what it's called. So, and the Thermacell, we got spares in Exmouth as well, for about the same price that you got down here. So that was at one of the tackle shops in the mall in Exmouth near the IGA up there. And yeah, so they sort of last sort of 4 hours for each one. Rounding this up a little bit, so accommodation prices, we obviously range from totally free through to $63, which was, off the top of my head, I think it was the second time in Broome for our emergency sort of repairs. And across the board, we're probably $45 a night for the free camping. WA doesn't have as much free camping as a lot of the other states. There is a lot of good stuff. They're few and far between. A lot of them are DPOR controlled, which is fine. I'm more than happy to spend $12 a night. In these circumstances, we just didn't. So if we did again, we'd probably look at some of those around Shark Bay a little bit more, but then they're caveated as well. So generally speaking, there's like 5 or 6 around Shark Bay, but you're only allowed to stay 24 hours in those sites and not bounce to another site. So you've got to go in from just say a Whalebone campsite into Denham or Monkey Mia, then maybe do a night in Francois Perrin National Park where you can stay for more nights. But then if you came out again and looked at those sort of Nanga Station areas and stuff like that, or like Eagle Bluff or any of those ones, you can only stay another 24 hours. So that was the caveat. I got some really good footage and stuff out near Whalebone, and windy as all hell that day. But with the pop-top caravan, it's a little bit of a limitation. But if you were swagging, it'll be fine. Or even if you had a rigid caravan, it'll be more than fine. Our best accommodation and or campsite, hands down, Quobba Station. Our only regret is we didn't get through to Red Bluff, which is sort of another 60k down the road. And in the circumstances that we had and the time that we had, we'll just do it next time. The whale that we saw jumped out of the water, which, to be honest, like, I don't know if I explained it good enough last time, but it was about 100 metres away from our campsite is where we were standing when the whales were coming out, and they were about 100 metres to sea. So that's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and Rhonda absolutely loved that. I'm lucky I get to see that kind of stuff with work fairly often, but it's nice being able to see dolphins and whales and stuff like that when your partner really enjoys it. The best facilities across the entire trip: the Coral Coast Tourist Park in Carnarvon. The toilets blocks were individual ensuites, so I think there was about 10. There was like 5 each side of it, and you go in there. There's a little, I was gonna say kitchenette. There's a little sink, toilet, shower, everything in there. So if you have a young family or anything like that, you could easily shower the kids and everything and get back out, rather than sort of playing Marco Polo with them between shower blocks and stuff like that to see if they're doing the right thing. The best place with things to do would be the bungalows. It was amazing there. It was really good to go into the bungalows, and I highly recommend it. Even if you fly in and go to some of the glamping places, or do a tour for the day or something like that, get one of the 4-wheel drive buses that go in and out, going yourself, like, there was just so much to do. We were really lucky, so we obviously had the van in there. We had one of the bigger vans in there. Being able to cook like roast dinner in the middle of the bungalows was awesome, and going hiking for the days, and the footage that we got and the photos. It's honestly like, so Rhonda takes a lot of the photos that we do as well. And I think that's where she realised, like, properly how to take good photos, and it just clicked for her, and it was really good to see her be able to embrace something that I really enjoy doing too. The final one we had is like places that we wish we stayed longer. Kununurra. We stayed 2 nights. We had a really good campsite at the caravan park there, and there's just so much to do around there. So we went to the gin distillery and all that kind of fun stuff. We did Ivanhoe Crossing, and we did the infinity pool, but we could have done more. So there's a lot of river cruises up there. There's a lot of fishing charters, going in and out of the gorges. You could have done 3-4 days there easy, and you wouldn't have been bored. And with Ron and I, we really enjoyed Kununurra. Like to this day, we're still sort of a bit disappointed in it. Quabba Station, you could spend all the time you want there. Going down to Red Bluff, be interesting because you can surf and swim off the beach there. So at the actual station, you can't swim. It's a protected zone, and it's rocky as all hell, and the tide goes out quite far. So you kind of end up popping out to the blowholes to be able to swim at a place called the Aquarium there. So Broome is another place that we could have easily stayed a little bit longer. So we did 3 nights the first time and 2 the second time. We had bad weather the second time, so yeah, we were waiting majority of a day and a half for old mate. But the second day, which is the day that we're looking at going to the Crocodile Park or Cape Leveque, was overcast as all hell and a little bit spitty, so probably wasn't the greatest day. And we sort of just explored around the town and just sort of chilled a little bit, which was kind of nice in itself. So yeah, if we didn't do it twice, we would have stayed in Broome for one sort of condensed sort of 5-day period. And there's heaps to do there. Once again, the whole fishing tours, sights to see and all that kind of stuff. Things that we forgot. So, watch charging cable. Smartwatches. They use a odd cable, and it's not just a regular USB-C or anything like that. So we ended up buying one in Broome. I thought I'd packed it, but I grabbed just another random charger or cable for a hard drive. So we had to take that. The battery drill that I keep alluding to. And then more spares for the van and not just the car. So sort of that wood screws, brackets, drill bits, stuff like that. Otherwise, we pretty much hit the nail on the head the first time with things that we would take. Otherwise, some of the other questions that you had were dust in the van. So the dust situation, when we're leaving the bungalows and I put the plastic sleeves over the vents, that worked really well. And we didn't end up taping the front leading edge of the roof to go down onto the van, which was fine. And we didn't have that much dust. But we had the vacuum for when we did have dust. And because it's sort of like smaller than this room, it took like 5 seconds to vacuum the whole lot. Gas wise, because of the gas fridge, which is about 35 cents a day, we actually refueled gas a couple of times. So I'd left with an empty tank, or knowing it was sort of 2/3 used. Kununurra, so about 10 days in, and then Kalbarri, which is sort of the second last day of the trip. We boil water as well, and we have a 4-litre kettle. So that was taking about 25 minutes to boil in the morning in the freezing to get coffee and to make sort of like a warm sink to be able to wash our dishes. So that is where a lot of the gas went. Some of the other questions we had were like, what are we filming with? So right now up there, filming with a Canon M50 mirrorless camera, and that's pretty much the camera that I use pretty much for the entire trip for most things. I run around with one of these on it, which is a Joby Gorilla Pod. This one is the, I want to say 3K, so 3 kilo variant, so you can have the big camera on top of it, and you can sort of just smush it into whatever shape you want to, and tie it on things, whatever. So we use that. I've also got a little one that Rhonda uses on her phone. So she's got a, what is it? It's one of the new Apple Pro Max or something like that. And the camera on that is phenomenal, and it shoots in RAW, which is really interesting too. So some of the photos that she got were really good. And in low light conditions, it films better than this camera does. So yeah, some of those long sunset photos, they're all off an iPhone, which is really sort of amazing in the long run with that. Other things that were asked of us were like, what mapping products do we use? So I've had these sort of HEMA hard copy sort of books for ages. These are like edition 2 and like 7 for the big one, which is like, that's like, I remember getting that for like my 18th birthday off the old man, and I'm pretty sure I bought that when I returned to WA with work, sort of 2012 or something like that. These ones were good because it had information on the bungles as well as some of the Give River track stuff to be able to sort of do the planning when we didn't have reception. But we also used a program called Wikicamps, which it's about, I think it's $8-ish. And for those that haven't used it, it's handy as all hell. So there's our trip literally there ready to go. And you can zoom in, find points of interest, and then it can calculate fuel for you and everything like that. And, it had all the stops and everything along the way that we were like, oh, where are we going to be? We're sort of 80k out. What's the next sort of situation? Are we going to stay in Headland? Are we going to push through? Which was really cool. So we didn't use it much to start with, but it has an offline mode in it as well. And by the end of the trip, we were using it at least 2-3 times a day. Easy. Other footage wise as well, Mavic Air, the old one. So I've got a review on that if you guys want to watch it. But DJI is basically the best brand in my opinion to use, and the interface for that is basically, it's, if you don't know how to fly, I'd go that to then learn the rules and drive from there. It's not hard to fly. A lot of people say they want the really cheap, nasty drones and put off with the drones forever. Whereas if you outlay a little bit more money, you can get a hard box and everything like that for the accessories, and that came with the 3 batteries, and if that fell out of the sky and broke, I'd probably just go buy another one. Like, simple as that. But yeah, that's pretty much what we've learnt along the way. You know, some people were asking what tools we took and everything like that. I might do a little bit more of an in-depth video, but generically speaking is I've got a small, cheap and nasty toolbox that I bought from Super Cheap Auto, which might be about the size of that, for like $30. I'll see if I can find the equivalent. It's old as all hell now. And then I've got my bigger Stanley set of tools that I took, which I'll try and find a link or a picture and put it up here. So between the two of those, it was the occasions that you needed the, you know, two spanners with the same sort of size, or two situations where, you know, you might need. They had smaller shafts on their spanners, which was a little bit handier because the Stanley set are quite long, even though long is good in sort of certain scenarios. So it was case by case for it all. The Super Cheap set had a vice grip in it as well, which was handy as all hell, trying to get some of those screws out of the slide. Other than that, I had a breaker bar and a torque wrench, and a couple of deep sockets for the Caravan and the car, because I think the Jeep, they were the same. So they were 19 mils on the Caravan, but the new car's a 21 mil socket for the tire, the wheel nuts, which did get loose. So retorquing happened a lot. So every sort of about 100k off road, there'd be a good retorque, and that included like bash plates, removing the bash plates to get to the spotlights, which were always on an angle because they just keep vibrating loose every sort of 50k. The antenna, we lost that the first time on the road out to James Price Point. And then, if I've not said number plates already, number plates, wheel nuts, battery terminals, anything that had anything on it that could get loose, did get loose. On the Caravan, it was more of the number plates and the wheel nuts. We did lose the gas regulator mounting screws through vibration, so they're just not there now. I don't know where they are, so buy some of them sooner rather than later. And then some of the indicators and stuff like that have actually come loose a little bit, so they've been retightened. But as I said, I'm more than happy to answer your questions. If you guys follow me on Instagram, I usually jump in on there, and I'm in the key forums as well, so the Jayco Australia and WA ones, as well as the Fortuna page. So if you guys have got any questions, I'm usually in there answering those. And as always, I hope you enjoy yourself and stay safe, and cheers guys, enjoy the video.